Well, first of all, welcome to the first in my new series of revamped persona Between the Sheets. I created Between the Sheets about 25 years ago, and I used it, didn't use it, but I've noticed recently 2 or 3 presenters have started using that name, and I thought, well, let me bring you back to the original. So welcome to Between the Sheets, excellent since 2000 with me, Duncan Williamson. And the purpose of this video is to introduce you to basic data analysis and then graduate onto the group by and the pivot by functions, which are relatively new for most of us Excel users. This video will be in 2 parts. Part 1 will be an analysis of the basics of data analysis, and the second part is group by and pivot by. So if you want to see group by and pivot by only, look out for part 2. They're clearly labeled on my channel, as you've probably seen already, but stop here by all means and take a look at my basic introduction to data analysis. It all revolves around the data you see in front of you now, starting in cell A5 of this worksheet, data. And I've got product, subcategory, order date, sales amount, and total product cost. There's around about 200 rows of data, and that's all the data we're going to be using in this Between the Sheets premiere. Let's move on to worksheet 2. Now I've linked all the data to the data worksheet, so you'll see just a formula. And on this worksheet, I'm doing what I always do when I start to analyze data. And I begin normally with the correlation coefficient, which is sales amount and total product costs correlated together. And the correlation coefficient is 0.9492, pretty high. That's telling you these are, well, obviously highly correlated, and if you put them on a graph, X versus Y, you'll see almost a straight line. Let's do that. The way to draw a graph in Excel is to go to the bottom of the list and select upwards, not down. Reason, when you draw the graph from bottom to top, just watch. Insert, scatter graph. It appears at the top of the list. If you select from top to bottom, it will be all the way down the bottom, 200 rows below. And you don't want that because you're going to copy, paste, blah, blah, blah. So get rid of the grid lines. I always format an outline so I can find it, because sometimes, you know, some of the themes that I use or I come across are not very friendly and things disappear. So there we are. There's my data set of sales amount against total product cost. Let's label it like that. Let's label the axes properly and anticipate that by getting ready. So here I've got my, what's it there? So I click on there, equals sales amount. While I'm doing this, how do I know that sales amount is on a horizontal axis? The answer is because it's in the first of the 2 columns. When you choose in 2, 3, 4, n columns for something like this, the first column is the X variable. What do we see? We can see an ever-increasing relationship. As sales amount gets higher, total product cost is getting higher. Not in a straight line, not in the way that you might have thought with a perfectly straight line in the middle, but in a V shape. That could be important. All right, so that's why correlation is so high. Secondly, the descriptive statistics. Something else I always do, I need to see how the data behaving. For example, I might need to consider whether I'm dealing with normal distribution data. One way is to do that is like this. The mean and the median. Are they the same or very nearly the same? If they were the same, there's a very good chance that the data are following a normal distribution. I think because of what we've just seen over there, that might not be true. And they're not the same anyway. Similarly, let's look at skewness. That's my next port of call. I go down to skewness and I find that the skewness of the sales amount is almost zero, minus 0.09, whereas the skewness of the total product cost is 0.22, which is positive and relatively quite a bit higher than sales amount. How do we visualize that? We do this. Go down to the bottom, select the sales amount. Don't select the header because you're wasting your time, because when they programmed histograms in Excel, they didn't do a proper job of the chart title and the axis labels. So anyway, insert, statistic chart, histogram. Again, choose bottom to top. There it is. Let's do our formatting. Get rid of the grid lines. Let's format the outline. You have to type this in. You can't choose it by means of clicking on the formula bar and choosing from the cell, because that doesn't work. That's why I say they programmed it wrong. Let's copy that, paste that. I'll move them in a second, don't worry. Now click on here, and all I have to do to turn this into the total product cost histogram is drag that carefully there, and there you are. So that's the skewness of 0.09 minus. It's almost a uniform distribution, whereas the sales amount has a skewness coefficient of plus 0.22, and you can see a downward sloping accent to these data from left to right. That's positive skew, and we can see it. It's positively skewed, not normal. It's not far from normal. It's just this bar, maybe, that's taken us away from being normal. Never mind. So, quickfire then. That's the kind of thing that you would always do when you're analysing your data. Let me try and put this down here where we can see it nice and tidy. I'll drop it somewhere like that. Not perfect. Let me get it perfect. There we are. What do we do next? Well, I've drawn a few graphs, line charts of product group, sales amount by product group, by those. Total product cost by product group, again here and here now. And notice we get a new value, whichever the product group, according to product group, like this in our line chart. There's 200 of them, although you can see every other 5 or whatever it happens to be. So, but anyway, that's not very useful for data analysis. We can see very volatile, but the overall trend is fairly static. It's fairly standard. But it's not exactly the analysis we would like, because I used the unique function there to analyze the products. How many product groups are there? And you can see there are 8 of them, and there are 3 subcategories. But you don't see 8, you see 200. You don't see 3, you see 200. So that's part of the problem that we're dealing with, which is why we're going to turn to group by and pivot by in a second. So there we are. Data analysis, my first view of the data at good quality. In real life, you would spend a little bit more time on this. You would take your analysis a step further. Maybe there's something that you do that I haven't done. that you would like to consider in more detail. But that's the first part of this video then. Basic data analysis of raw data with me, Between the Sheets, Duncan Williamson. Excellent since 2000.